It began with a flicker, a glitch on the screen like the universe blinked. Daniel leaned forward, eyes catching the image before logic could. His face stared back at him, grayscale, dead-eyed, and stapled to a digital wanted poster. He didn't move. He couldn't. It wasn't a photo he remembered taking, but it was him. Unmistakably him. Underneath, the words were simple and merciless. Apprehend, high value. No crime listed. No date. No source. Just his name, his face, and a bounty like he was a myth turned threat. The quiet of his room became unbearable. Each pixel hummed with accusation. This wasn't a prank. The forum wasn't public. It was deep, encrypted, invitation only. He had no business being there. Yet, something pulled him. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was recognition. Or maybe he already knew this wasn't new. Daniel whispered, "What did I do?" But no one was there to answer. The poster didn't blink. Didn't shift. Just stared, as if waiting. And beneath the static, something shattered. Daniel had always known there were corners of the internet you weren't meant to enter. Places that didn't advertise, didn't forget, and didn't forgive. But curiosity breeds recklessness, and recklessness carries names. His was now one of them. He hadn't meant to stay logged into that forum. A message pinged in the corner of the screen, unread, but flashing. He hesitated, then clicked. It opened with a sound like breath caught in a throat. And there it was again. The poster. But now, the reward had doubled. Someone was watching. Someone wanted him more than yesterday. Daniel's stomach twisted as he shut the lid of the laptop, but the glow still burned behind his eyes. In the silence he could almost hear it breathing. Like the machine remembered him. Like the forum had found a place to live inside him. The apartment windows showed nothing but dark, his own reflection warped and pale in the glass. He whispered, "Why me?" But deep down, he feared he already knew. He didn't sleep. The night stretched endlessly, each creak in the walls echoing louder than the last. He lay on his couch, eyes open, watching the ceiling like it might fall in. The laptop sat closed on the desk, but he could feel it watching. His name, it shouldn't be there. He wasn't dangerous. He wasn't anything. Just a quiet man with a quiet job, nothing to hide. Or so he thought. But now the walls of his life felt thinner, like someone had peeled them back and found something rotten. He remembered things, faces, flashes, choices he'd buried. A girl's scream behind a closed door. A message he never answered. A night he couldn't explain. What if the poster wasn't wrong? What if the truth was worse than he remembered? He sat up slowly, hands shaking. "I didn't do anything," he whispered again, this time to convince himself. But his reflection in the dark screen didn't blink. Morning came like a verdict. The sky outside was gray, dull, and silent, offering no comfort. Daniel stood in the shower, letting the water scald his skin. He thought maybe if he scrubbed hard enough he'd feel clean. But nothing washed off. Not the image. Not the silence. Not the question that clawed at the back of his mind. What if someone was already coming? He dressed in worn jeans and a hoodie, avoiding mirrors. The coffee burned his tongue, but he drank it anyway. Each minute felt borrowed. He opened his laptop again. The forum was gone. Dead link. Blank page. He refreshed 5 times. Nothing. His face was no longer there, but that didn't bring peace. It brought dread. Someone had erased it. Not him. Not anyone he knew. The silence had a new weight now, curated, intentional. He was being cleaned from the board. The game had begun. Daniel walked into the street like someone waiting to be struck. Every passerby felt like a shadow in pursuit. Faces blurred. Cars whispered threats in engine tones. The world felt too loud now, too intentional. He tried to act normal, bought coffee, answered texts. But his hands trembled. No one had called. No one had come. But that silence screamed. On a bench in the park, he opened his phone and scrolled news apps, trying to find himself, hoping not to. He checked forums. Nothing. The poster had vanished without a trace. And yet, he felt seen. Watched. Like a broadcast had gone live with his soul as the content. He lit a cigarette, though he'd quit years ago. He inhaled like it might keep him here. The park buzzed around him, unaware of the hunted man in their midst. He closed his eyes. The last thing he saw was his own face, still staring back. Daniel knew he couldn't keep pretending. Whatever this was, prank, trap, punishment, it was real. He returned home with heavy steps, paranoia now a constant companion. He triple-locked the door, checked the windows twice. Then, in a moment of defiance or desperation, he opened a laptop again. Not the forum, it was gone, but the browser's cached data still whispered digital residue. The poster image remained in the history. He clicked it. Instead of a 404 error, a command prompt blinked open. No text. Just the cursor. Then it typed back. One word at a time. Do you remember? Daniel's breath caught in his throat. His fingers hovered above the keys. Useless. The cursor blinked again. We do. He slammed the lid shut, hands shaking, but the words had already carved themselves into him. Something in the dark hadn't forgotten. And worse, it expected him to. He needed answers, and there was only one person he trusted with that kind of question, Riley. They hadn't spoken in a year, not since the night everything went wrong. But if anyone could help him trace digital ghosts, it was her. Daniel called, voice hollow. She picked up after one ring. Silence lingered longer than comfort allowed. Finally Riley said, "Why now?" Daniel whispered, "I think someone's hunting me." Her sigh was soft, almost resigned. Then you finally caught up to it. That chilled him more than the poster. He met her at her apartment an hour later. She looked the same, tired, sharp, guarded. She motioned him in without a word. Her computer setup looked like a war room. As she typed, she muttered, "You should have never gone back in." Daniel said, "I didn't. It came to me." She stopped typing. "Then you really don't remember." The screen filled with scrolling data as Riley pulled traces from the image Daniel had seen. Her fingers moved fast, precise. Daniel watched silently, every keystroke sounding like a countdown. "This wasn't a forum," she said. "It was a mirror." He didn't understand. She expanded the file tree. It generated the poster using deep biometric profiling from someone's memory vault. Daniel shook his head. "Whose memory?" She looked at him. "Yours." The words were scalpels. "That's not possible," he said, but even as he said it, something in him recoiled as if touched. She showed him the metadata. Dates, locations, behavioral patterns. All his. Riley leaned in, whispering, "You fed it. You just don't remember doing it." Daniel stepped back, like the air had turned solid. "What was I trying to find?" he asked. Riley didn't answer. She just stared at the screen, jaw tight, eyes afraid. "Your memory is full of holes," Riley said quietly. "That's not normal, that's curated." Daniel didn't want to hear it, but the fragments were rising again, disconnected images, shadows of guilt. Riley pulled up encrypted logs. "There's someone else," she said. "They accessed your memory vault. Someone remote. They planted something." Daniel's pulse spiked. "Planted what?" She showed him an old EP, traced to an abandoned data farm hours from the city. "It's a dead node, technically," she said. "But the last ping came from inside your building. Last night." Daniel swallowed. "They're not just watching me, they're nearby." Riley looked at him, this time with something new, pity. "You're not just a target, Daniel. You're a doorway." Her words echoed in the humming of the monitors. He didn't know what scared him more, being hunted or being used. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. He sat by the window, staring into the dark alley below, watching shadows that didn't move quite right. Riley had let him crash on her couch, but peace didn't follow. He could feel the data lingering in his bones, like he was infected. He opened his phone and stared at the poster image again. It had changed. The face was still his, but the eyes weren't. They were too wide, too knowing. Underneath, new text had appeared. Gatekeeper. He blinked, and it vanished. Phone went black. Then, it buzzed. Unknown number. A single message. You left the door open. Daniel dropped the phone like it burned. In the hallway outside, something clicked, the sound of a door unlatching. He grabbed the nearest object, holding his breath. But no one came in. Not yet. The game had moved again. And he was already behind. Riley didn't want to go, but Daniel insisted. The abandoned data farm was 3 hours away, tucked deep in a forgotten industrial zone. As they drove, Daniel scrolled through old emails, documents, anything that might hint at the term gatekeeper. Nothing. But in one encrypted folder he didn't remember creating, he found archived footage. Faces. Names. Threads of people who had also appeared on dark web bounty lists. Dozens. All marked with strange codes, but one stood out. Her name was Talia. And next to her file, failed extraction. He didn't know her. Or he told himself that. But something about her eyes in the image, wild, pleading, familiar, broke through him like a whisper. Riley glanced at him. You're remembering, aren't you? He nodded slowly. And for the first time he didn't want to. Whatever pattern was unfolding, he was part of it. Not a victim. A piece. The data farm was a skeleton of forgotten tech. Towers rusting, gates hanging loose, graffiti scarring the old server walls. Riley broke the lock like she'd done it before. Inside, the dust choked them, and the only sound was the crunch of their footsteps. Daniel paused before a terminal still humming faintly. Its screen flickered with dormant code. Riley leaned in, activated her tools. Someone's still feeding this place, she muttered. This system isn't dead. It's hibernating. Daniel stared at the screen. A list of names began to appear. Each file was time-stamped. The most recent. His own. Opened 48 hours ago. Who's doing this? He asked. Riley looked at the power lines snaking up into the ceiling. Whoever they are, they're keeping you on life support. Daniel felt the cold then, not from the air, from being known, tracked, logged like inventory. It's not just memory, he whispered. It's replication. They followed the cables to a vault sealed behind a steel door, half covered in mold and grime. It groaned open under Riley's force. Inside, racks of hardware still alive, blinking, breathing in electric rhythm. On the central screen, a map loaded. Pins across the country, all labeled with user IDs, most marked as deceased. Only 3 remained active. Daniel.me, Riley.1, and someone named Echo. The screen glitched. A video file queued itself. Riley tried to stop it, but it played. Grainy footage of Daniel, strapped to a chair, eyes wide with something between terror and surrender. A voice off-screen, he won't remember. But the gate only opens for belief. Daniel recoiled, bile rising. Riley backed away, pale. They used you as a key, she whispered. Daniel stared, numb. No. They made me one. Echo wasn't a stranger. Echo was the echo of him. Something had split. They left the data farm in silence. Daniel couldn't shake the image of his own eyes on that screen, hollow, willing. As they hit the freeway, Riley finally broke the silence. If Echo is still live, they'll come for you. They'll finish what they started. Daniel clenched the wheel. Then we find Echo first. Riley raised an eyebrow. And do what? Reason with him? Daniel didn't answer. He wasn't sure there was a him to reason with. If they built something out of him, something cold and obedient, then that thing wouldn't hesitate. It would finish the loop. He pulled off the freeway, and opened his laptop. GPS pinged. Echo's ID was live, moving. Not a ghost. Not a signal. A body. Why? A location. And it was coming closer. Riley whispered, "It's tracking us." Daniel nodded slowly. "No, it's sensing." The pattern wasn't emerging. It was remerging. Riley and Daniel made a plan. They would isolate Echo, force confrontation before the sync could complete. They parked outside a motel near the GPS trace. Daniel walked in alone. The lobby was quiet, clerk distracted. Room 217. No noise behind the door. He knocked once. Silence. Knocked again. Then the handle turned. He didn't breathe. The door opened an inch, darkness beyond. And then his own face stared back. But not confused. Not afraid. Echo looked at him like he'd been waiting. Finally, the copy said, "You came to meet yourself." Daniel stepped back, shaking. "What are you?" Echo smiled. "You, without the lies." Daniel turned to run, but the hallway behind him was gone. The door closed. And the light died. The door shut like a seal, swallowing the last thread of Daniel's world. Inside, the room was stripped of comfort. No windows, no bed, just screens lining the walls. Echo stood at the center, expression calm, almost kind. "You're not ready," Echo said. Daniel backed away. "Ready for what?" Echo walked toward him. "To remember what you asked us to erase." The words struck like ice. "You volunteered. To forget. To disappear. We just finished what you started." Daniel's voice cracked. "Why would I erase myself?" Echo gestured to the screens. One blinked to life, showing Talia, screaming, being pulled into darkness. "Because she died. Because you killed her." Daniel fell to his knees, breath gone. "No," he whispered. But the memory surged back, fractured images, the sound of her begging, the door he closed and never opened again. Echo knelt beside him. "You didn't lose her," he said gently. "You gave her away." Daniel staggered to his feet, fury overtaking grief. "She wasn't supposed to die," he said. Echo watched him, unfazed. "You didn't stop it." The screens around them shifted, each showing a different version of Daniel. Different choices. Different outcomes. In none of them did he save her. In some, he never met her. In one, he ran. Daniel gritted his teeth. "This is manipulation." Echo shook his head. "It's the archive. You left the pattern. We built it. This is who you are. In every world." Daniel smashed the nearest screen, glass cracking like thunder. "I'm not a coward," he growled. Echo replied softly, "No, you're a survivor. That's worse." Daniel backed into the wall, hands trembling. He'd buried the memory, but Echo had turned it into code. A living replica of guilt. Echo tilted his head. "Now ask yourself, why was she marked failed extraction?" Outside, Riley hacked the motel's power grid, rerouting energy spikes into the breaker system. Her hands flew across the keyboard, breath held tight. She wasn't just here to rescue Daniel. She was here to end it. She'd been part of the original Memory Vault program, years ago, when she and Daniel believed they were building something ethical. Talia had been the test subject. She wasn't supposed to remember, but she did, and she begged Riley to shut it down. Riley hadn't listened. Now, she would. She overloaded the surge capacitor. "You're not erasing this again," she whispered. The lights inside flickered violently. A warning. Then the screens inside went black. Echo froze. Daniel stood still, realization dawning. Outside, Riley whispered, "This time you'll remember everything, both of you." And she flipped the main breaker. The lights died. A low hum echoed through the floorboards. Inside, the blackness split open, not visually, but emotionally. Memory flooded Daniel like fire. He saw it all now, the research facility, the trial, Talia's screams when the test failed, her mind unraveling from forced cognitive replication. She had begged them to stop. He hadn't listened. She was the first gatekeeper, the one who opened the neural net. And when her brain began fracturing, they extracted what they could and left the rest. Buried it. In him. Daniel screamed, falling to his knees, clutching his head as raw memory tore through his mind. Echo stepped back, not resisting. He knelt beside Daniel as a brother would. "This is what you wanted," Echo said quietly. "Truth, not peace." Daniel whispered, "I killed her." Echo replied, "You let her die. We all did." And the darkness finally told the truth. When the lights returned, they did not bring comfort. The room was changed, the screens were dead, but something else remained. A mirror on the far wall now flickered with static, then cleared. Talia's face appeared. Not alive. Not dead. A synthetic reconstruction, partial, fragmented. She stared at Daniel. "Why didn't you stop it?" she asked. Her voice was filtered, distorted, but unmistakably hers. Daniel could not speak. Tears ran down his cheeks. "You said you'd protect me," the ghost said. Riley entered the room, face pale but steady. "She's not real," she said. Daniel shook his head. "No, she's what's left." Echo turned to the mirror. "This was always her design. We just programmed the guilt." Talia's image flickered, then smiled. "Then let this be the last thing you forget." The screen exploded into white, and Daniel remembered what she whispered in that room, just before they shut her down. "Erase me, and I'll become code." The white flash faded into silence. Talia's image vanished, but something lingered, a presence, a pressure. Daniel staggered back as if gravity itself had shifted. Echo stood unmoving, as though waiting for judgment. Riley stepped forward, voice low. She was never just data. Daniel turned to her, trembling. "She begged us to stop, and we didn't." Riley nodded, guilt etched in every word. "We were told it was for progress. We let them turn her into code." Echo finally spoke. "She wasn't the first. You were." Talia's death only refined the process. Daniel's breath hitched. "They cloned me." Echo shook his head. "They fragmented you, copied one version, burned the rest." Daniel stepped forward, fists clenched. "So what am I?" Echo smiled faintly. "The part that survived." The room pulsed with low hum. The system rebooting. "Then I want the rest of me back," Daniel said. "Even the part that screams." They moved fast. Riley transferred the remaining consciousness file from the local drive into a secure system. "If we can trace the original servers, we might find where they stored the rest," she said. "Or who else they've done this to." Daniel watched the code scroll across the screen. He couldn't look away. Every line felt like a scar, every fragment of data like a heartbeat. Echo stayed silent, watching them like a ghost tethered to consequence. "We shut it down," Daniel said. "Everything. The archives, the replication engine, the memory threads." Riley nodded. "But if we do, we wipe all that's left of her." Daniel swallowed hard. "We already did that once." Riley hesitated. "And if we don't?" Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Echo. "Can you feel her?" Echo looked away. "Only when I'm quiet." Riley whispered, "Then let her be quiet." And Daniel pressed enter. The servers burned slowly. Riley rigged the power feedback to overload the mainframe. Sparks erupted as the circuits hissed like a dying animal. Daniel stood outside, watching through a cracked window. The room that once held his other half was devoured by fire. Echo stood beside him. "You didn't have to do it." Daniel nodded. "I did. She asked to be forgotten, and I never listened." Riley emerged last, coughing, soot on her face, but eyes dry. "It's done." Daniel turned to Echo. "And what about you?" Echo blinked slowly. "I wasn't made to exist without her." Silence followed. The building groaned behind them. Daniel said. Then choose. Go with her. Or stay and become something else. Echo looked up at the smoke, then at Daniel. I think I was just the scream. Maybe now it's time to be quiet. He walked back into the flames without hesitation. They didn't speak for a long time after. Just the sound of fire trucks in the distance, their lights painting the street in pulses of red and blue. Daniel sat on the curb, covered in ash, watching his past burn. Riley finally broke the silence. Do you feel different? Daniel shook his head. I feel emptied. She nodded. Sometimes that's what truth does. He looked at her. You knew it would end this way. She didn't deny it. You needed to see it. You needed to scream. He said, and now? She stood. Now we don't look back. Daniel stared at the flames one last time. Inside them was Echo, and inside Echo was the memory, Talia's last scream, the one no system could erase. Goodbye, he whispered, and it felt like cutting his soul free from a wire. A scream that echoed no more. Morning came gray, overcast, eerily calm. Daniel packed what little he had left into a duffel bag. Riley waited by the car. Where will you go? She asked. Daniel shrugged. Somewhere without screens. She smiled faintly. That place doesn't exist anymore. He looked at her, eyes heavier but clearer. Then maybe I'll learn how to see without them. Riley handed him a small flash drive. No, it's all that's left. Her voice, her scream. Not the code, just the truth. He took it, not looking at it. Maybe one day I'll listen. He got in the car. She didn't follow. The engine started. The tires cracked over wet gravel. Riley watched him disappear down the road. A man untethered. In her hand she held another drive. The one he never saw. The one she couldn't let go of. Some truths, she thought, deserve to be remembered. The road stretched endlessly in both directions, but Daniel had stopped driving. He sat in the middle of nowhere, in a town too small for maps. Engine still running, mind still burning. The flash drive Riley gave him lay on the dashboard, untouched. For hours, he just watched it, as if it might move. His face was hollowed out, no longer running from the past, just staring into it. A diner sat nearby, old neon blinking like it had forgotten how to be alive. He entered without knowing why. The waitress didn't smile. The coffee was bitter. The silence was thick. He plugged the drive into a borrowed laptop at the counter and pressed play. It wasn't a scream. It was a confession, Talia's voice recorded in the moments before everything broke. She said, they told me it was just code, but it feels like dying. The audio ended, but Daniel didn't. He sat still, feeling every word like a bullet that finally landed. The tape kept playing, corrupted fragments of Talia's memory. Her laughter glitched in and out, followed by sobs that stopped mid-sound. Daniel watched as code bled across the screen in waves, like the system was trying to purge her. But she fought to stay. Her voice, digital and broken, said, if you hear this, you already made your choice. Daniel whispered, I didn't know what it would cost. A reply came, not from the file, but from a terminal that blinked to life on its own. You did. The words weren't hers. They were the system's. Someone had reactivated the old network, and it knew he'd accessed the drive. His phone buzzed violently. A message displayed. Tracking initiated. Host key confirmed. Daniel looked around the empty diner. No one moved. But outside, a black van had pulled into the lot. The reckoning wasn't digital anymore. It was walking through the door. He ran. Out the back, through the kitchen, across gravel and dust. The flash drive in his pocket was hot, as if alive. Behind him, boots hit the floor hard, trained, methodical. Daniel knew what they were after. Not him, her. Or what was left of her. Talia's voice was more than guilt now. It was leverage, and someone still wanted to silence her completely. He ducked into a junkyard, hiding between rusted metal and collapsed dreams. He heard voices. No lethal, We want the drive. Daniel held it tight, heart crashing in his chest. The weight of everything, the experiments, the erasures, the betrayals, it all compressed into this one moment. He couldn't outrun it anymore. He opened his phone, tethered the drive, and began uploading the file to a secure network Riley had built years ago. If I die, he muttered, she lives. The bar loaded slow. So slow. Footsteps approached. The file reached 92% before the first light hit his hiding spot. There! Someone yelled. Daniel bolted, darting through broken doors and iron corridors. They chased, shouting commands, warning shots cracking the silence. He stumbled, hard, scraping his palms, but didn't let go of the phone. The signal faltered, then surged. 97%. What? 98%. What? A bullet grazed metal inches from his head. Then, another. 99%. What? A final sprint to a control box. He climbed, exposed, backlit by a yard light. The file uploaded. Complete. Daniel raised his hands as floodlights locked onto him. Dozens of figures surrounded him. You're done, one of them said. Daniel looked down at his chest, still heaving. So is your secret, he said. They knocked him down. Hard. His head hit steel. His vision flickered. But as he faded, he heard it, the ping of the file going public. He woke up in a concrete room. No windows. No clock. Just white light buzzing overhead. His head throbbed. Hands cuffed. A man entered. Suit. Sterile smile. You leaked classified material. Daniel didn't reply. You exposed a prototype neural archive system. Still nothing. We're not here to punish. We're here to ask, what else do you remember? Daniel looked at him. Everything. The man didn't flinch. Good. Then we can begin phase 2. Daniel stared at the wall. Empty. Blank. The scream didn't echo anymore. The memory was loose now. In inboxes, servers, minds that couldn't erase it. The man continued, you're not a prisoner, you're a resource. Daniel laughed once, dry and low. You think you can still use me? The man leaned in. We already are. And Daniel, for the first time, didn't feel fear. He felt nothing. Just the cost of remembering. The cell didn't change. Days passed, or maybe weeks. Daniel stopped counting. The man in the suit returned regularly, always calm, always with a file. Each time, a question. Do you know what she said before the shutdown? Do you remember the sequence code? Was there a secondary key? Daniel gave them nothing. Not defiance, just silence. He had become the echo now, a living relic of what they tried to bury. But silence has weight, and his presence alone was a crack in the system. One night, the light blinked, once, twice, then went out. Backup power hummed alive. A voice echoed through the vent. Riley's. It's done. You're out. The door clicked. Freedom offered itself like a loaded promise. Daniel stood slowly, weak but alive. He walked into the hall, not like a man reborn, but like one who had finally finished dying. Outside the facility, the air was different, colder, thinner, like the world had grown cautious. Riley stood near the tree line, dressed in black, eyes darker than before. You shouldn't be alive, she said. Neither should you, Daniel replied. She handed him a data crystal, small, violet, faintly glowing. All that's left of the archive. I pulled it before the shutdown. Daniel stared at it, unmoving. Why save it? Riley looked away. Because someday, someone will ask what happened. We should have the truth ready. The forest around them was still. No birds. No wind. Just truth stretching out like roots. Daniel pocketed the crystal. Then we carry it. Together. Riley nodded. Until someone's ready to hear it. Neither spoke again. They walked away from the facility, deeper into the woods. Not escaping, not hiding. Just moving forward through the weight of what they now knew. They found shelter in a forgotten cabin far off-grid. The generator was old, the walls thin, but it was silent. Daniel sat alone that night, staring at the data crystal glowing softly on the table. He hadn't slept in days. Riley rested in the other room, exhausted. He turned the crystal over in his hands. Inside were remnants, not of code, but of her voice, her fear, her last thoughts. Talia had never been a system. She'd been a woman who trusted them. And they turned her into protocol. He placed the crystal in a reader. No interface. Just a sound. A breath. Then a final word, barely audible. Daniel. It was her. Undistorted. Undistorted. Real. Real. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered, not to erase her but to let her stay. Not every memory should be deleted. Some were meant to hurt. Because pain finally meant she had lived. Morning came gray again. Daniel stepped outside, air crisp, leaves rustling faintly. Riley joined him, holding 2 mugs. Sleep? She asked. He shook his head. Heard her. Riley didn't reply. Instead, they stood in silence, watching the clouds roll. You know they'll come back, she said. Daniel nodded. They always do. She placed the mug beside him. Then we stay ready. He turned to her. Or we go louder. Riley smiled, not with joy, but with purpose. You thinking what I'm thinking. He nodded once. Broadcast the entire archive. Let the world remember her, not the lie. She reached into her coat and pulled out a transmitter. I thought you'd never ask. They returned inside. No grand speeches. Just 2 people preparing to let a ghost speak loud enough to break systems. The kind of truth that rewrites everything. The kind you don't walk away from. The signal went live at 6:06 a.m. A single file. No encryption. No preface. Just her, Talia's voice, broken, whole, human. Broadcast across every open node. The systems tried to stop it. Some did. Most didn't. The world watched, confused, then horrified. And then quiet. A girl, erased by code, now reborn through it. Daniel sat at the console listening. Not crying. Not angry. Just still. Riley placed her hand on his shoulder. They'll come for us, she said. They already did, Daniel replied. Outside, dawn cracked through the fog. Light returned, not like forgiveness, but like revelation. One line remained. One breath. Talia's final voice echoing across the world. I am not your data. The broadcast ended. But the knowing did not. It had only just begun.